Perzik, thank you for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a bittersweet talk. The title of this talk is called The Hand That Strikes Also Blocks. It's a story, so join me for the next hour as I kind of narrate my own personal journey through Hack in the Box and what I've learned about cybersecurity along the way. My name is Saumil Shah. Recently, I am the founder of Ring Zero Training, and I have been doing this stuff for a very long time now. When I was preparing the talk, I was figuring out what to do. I have a folder of slides, and I realized how many folders I have in a folder called HITB. All right, mic goes a little higher. How's that? Good? Right. So I realized that the journey with Hack in the Box has been a long one. The idea for my talk came from two keynotes, one by my friend Halvar Flick and one by myself back-to-back at Black Hat Asia 2017. Both of us were talking about the interoperation or the effect that is caused when attacks meet defense. 2017, the premise of my keynote was that attacks succeed because the defense is reactive. There's always catch up. And that was the title of my keynote was the 7 Axioms of Security, where I first started thinking differently about taking a different position towards defense. And parallelly, Halvar was posing a very important point in his keynote called Why We Are Not Building a Defendable Internet. And the gist of his keynote was that while attacks are a technical problem, defense is a political problem. And this year, both these keynotes basically set me thinking in a very different direction. So this is a talk about evolution. It's about attacks. It's about defense. It's about a very complicated term called PEBKAC. Right. Well, evolution always begins with a salute to the two fathers of human and digital evolution. Rest in peace, Gordon Moore. He passed away last month. He was a brilliant man. But he was the one who gave us Moore's Law, a law that has kind of withstood the tests of time up until the last couple of years. That the number of components per integrated circuit shall double every year with the cost virtually remaining the same. This has a very, very profound effect on the evolution of digital technology. What does this mean? Well, let me take you back to 2003 when Hack in the Box first began. Separately, in a lab in Virginia, this is my friend who I went to school with, Dr. Srinidhi Vardarajan. He put together the third fastest supercomputer in the world. What was most amazing about this is he did it out of the first 1100 iMac G5s that were shipped out by Apple. Desktop computing being connected by InfiniBand was able to produce a computing power of 10 teraflops. Now, back in those days, to produce 10 teraflops, you needed a number of zeros in your budget. And Srinidhi pulled this off with a number less than $10 million. This was an order of magnitude lower than the supercomputers in this 10 teraflop league. Now, I happen to have typed root commands at the root shell of this supercomputer. So, yes, big fanboy moment for me. But fast forward it, right? Fast forward this spec to 2019. What do we have? This is the stuff that Dylan used to play with, and I was always envious of it. This is the NVIDIA Xavier. This little thing, which is about 5 or 6 square inches in dimension, this clocks 11 teraflops, right? And Amazon will deliver it in my hometown of Ahmedabad for a price tag of $1,700. Prime shipping, if you don't like it, you can return it. So the cost of supercomputing has come down from $10 million to $1,700 for the same teraflop value. Now, around the same time, I had an epiphany. And this epiphany, I want to also attribute it to Fish, who was standing at the back. I was taking an Arduino workshop with him at the Krasnopolsky. And then it occurred to me that we're literally taking an Arduino, programming it and building circuits. And my dad is a hobbyist. He used to build these circuits out of discrete transistors. Like, he used to teach me how to do flip-flops. Didn't go into my brain much, but like, he would build everything using bipolar junction transistors and make flip-flops and then create the circuits out of oscillators and whatnot. And now we're taking a cheap little chip and simply programming it and getting the circuit going in less than an hour. And this led to me having a discussion with my dad saying, you know what, the microprocessor is the new transistor. And this led to a number of philosophical reflections in what happened in 2007. 2007 was also a very interesting year in terms of evolution. Now, technology doesn't get birthed until evolutionary factors are present to gestate it. 4 factors came in place, rather mature. What do you get if you combine 3G, the power of small computing, satellites and GPS, and lithium-ion batteries? Obvious answer, right? You get this, your phone. And this was the birth of the smartphone, and that has changed the world ever since. The internet literally moved from the desktop to the pocket. And our lives ended up being virtualized. This was the beginning of the social virtualization, as I call it. We started sharing all our life. And we started our first steps towards living in a digital world. At the same time, another creature was being born out of the same evolutionary factors. And that is the drone. This is autonomous flying machines, which could have never worked if, hey, the batteries were heavier, or if there was no guidance, no GPS, or no bandwidth to connect back, nor would there be computing power fast enough to perform in-flight corrections. Now, when these technologies evolve, you start combining them with AI. We've seen like some fantastic evolutions in just the past 8 months or so, right? We're taking one step closer either towards Skynet or the Matrix. Let me not get into that. But speaking about the offensive side of things, where have attacks gone? So, tracing the past 20 years of attacks, right? We did exploit development basically to get ourselves into conferences for shits and giggles and the lols. There's a photo taken in Singapore. Me, Halvar, Grug, Dave, Ital, and SK. I don't know who the photobomb is. But back then, we would like spend 3 to 6 months writing an exploit, and we get to show it off, then we get invited at a conference, and we get to hang out. And we did it for the Security Vacation Club. These exploits, I know, were like evergreen. They would have a long shelf life. We could use them for almost another year or so sometimes. And then we used to publish them on Packet Storm, on some forums, whatnot. But eventually, the target started evolving. We went from targeting servers, and now we're targeting human minds using technology. And the evolution of targets can also be traced to economics and money. Like, why don't we target servers anymore? Because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, back then it did. We used to do defacement and DDoS. But now all that has evolved from, defacement, DDoS to financial fraud, APT, and now we're using nation-state level scale in terms of attacks. The theater has completely changed. Here's an evolution question to ask when it comes to attacks. What do you get if you combine Windows and Bitcoin? Ransomware. Now, is the concept of ransomware so new? No, it's not. Worms were around for a very long time. Ophir Arkin published a paper based on a discussion he and I had in 2001, tracing the origins of an attack, and he theorized that we could easily create a worm which will lock up all the files and basically render every computer useless. There was no motivation to do it until cryptocurrency came along, where this type of activity could be monetized to fund a democratic nation somewhere over there. Then we have some super attacks, More on the evolution change, we go down to the hardware with stuff like Rowhammer, Spectre, and Meltdown, which very few engineers even really understand, let alone have the means to defend it. And I presented a tool over here at the boards called Stegosploit. It was a proof of concept technique of hiding an exploit in pixels and have it auto-decode itself. This was also largely misunderstood by the media, but till date, there aren't any mitigations against, like proper defenses against Rowhammer, Spectre, Meltdown, and Stegosploit. So what does that tell us, right? That led me to believe, or rather, I was deeply influenced by an architecture blog that I was reading. And this blog described a concept called NAKATOMI space. It was entirely about buildings and architecture and how like the Israeli defense forces would moving laterally through buildings, like literally through, like smashing the shit out of the walls and moving through and going, traversing the space at their will without using the intended moves of traversal. Exactly what Bruce Willis does in the Nakatomi Tower. And that told me something. That was another lesson I learned, that the more complex your system is, be it hardware, be it software, be it a network, or be it a group of people, there will be Nakatomi space. Can't avoid it. Can't build a building without air conditioning ducts or plumbing. It might be enough for Bruce Willis to crawl through it. So let it happen. What we're going to do with Nakatomi space, I'll tell you in a little bit. But around the same time frame, like early 2000s, I started seeing two timelines for attacks and defense. Right? In terms of timeline number one, we have the evolution of a new species. As attacks ramped up, it led to the birth of exploit mitigation technologies. And these started coming out like crazy until Halvar actually painted a creature called the mitigator, a well-intentioned but short-sighted but not terribly effective alligator, always working to make exploitation harder. And for years we had talks about, okay, how do we bypass ASLR, bypass DEP, bypass controls for the flow integrity and whatnot. And it's still going on. But a parallel timeline was rather politically driven, and that started coming from Microsoft. Because back in 2001, Microsoft was getting not a very good reputation. There were worms like Red Code Red and Nimda and whatnot. And a memo went out internally by Scott Culp. And the memo was a rather strongly worded memo. As it said that it is time to end information anarchy. The language used was basically portraying researchers as the enemy. And that was a stand which basically put the two sides at loggerheads. This article, this memo, was the basis of Bill Gates' famous trustworthy computing memo. But Gates' intentions were turned into the opposite kind of actions. It started becoming a witch hunt. And in 2002, I was present at a closed doors meeting where the employer who I worked for, a boutique consulting firm, and a number of other boutique consulting firms around at the time, there were like 7 or 8 of them, we were called in the room at Black Hat. Microsoft basically told us, you got to play nice with us. Like, no advisor is coming out. They all go to us. Otherwise, you're going to lose your contracts. That was the threat. But that just basically alienated the researchers from the defenders. Now, this was rapidly corrected. I want to set the record straight. Andrew Cushman and Sarah Blankenship worked tirelessly at Microsoft, founded MSRC, and basically turned the whole thing around. They embraced the community, and they're doing like excellent work. They now have a conference called Blue Hat. And the genesis of it was to basically set everything right again. They did a great job of it too. But these type of knee-jerk reactions led to some strange effects. 2005, this was reinforced by the whole Cisco Gate incident, where Michael Lynn was about to present an exploit using an iOS, a Cisco iOS, not our phone iOS, Cisco iOS router. And his talk was censored. They had lawyers fly in on jets into Black Hat, And there were crew members literally slicing out Lynn's slides from the presentation binders all night using paper cutters. Lynn went up and did the talk anyways. Fast forwarding that story, Dino Daidzovi and Alex Sotirov held this banner up on stage at CanSecWest 2009, saying, you know what, enough of this, no more free bugs. We're not going to play with you, you're going to treat us badly, you don't get the research. What happened then? Well, then came the concept of bug bounties. And the idea was, okay, we as vendors want to respect your research, we want to pay you, and we want to buy our bugs back. That was the whole core concept of bug bounties. But very quickly, we saw stakes being raised. And this is a photograph at Hack in the Box 2012 at Kuala Lumpur. For the first time, we literally saw like Google come with $2 million of cash and started handing out 5 figures for bugs being disclosed. This led to another sort of a race that's all about the money now. You don't get research if you don't shell out gobs and gobs of money. So forwarding from 2002 to 2012, this is a photo again. Just the same crew got together after 10 years with the real Lim Shady photobombing us. There has to be a photobomb. But now the exploit development time has taken, basically you're literally looking at 2 months to 12 months for working on a bug. Shelf life is reduced to maximum from 24 hours to 1 week. No exploits being disclosed in the public domain. And the costs of exploits have risen so much that somebody who's paying these costs will now either commercialize them, weaponize them, or politicize them. And sure enough, the bug bounty bazaar and the shopping list started taking off, with prices being published, and an entire market was born. I'm going to take a slightly different direction here. At the same time around, 2010, my friend Harun Mir asked this very fundamental question. And he asked to 4 researchers, like for a few $100,000, could you put together a team that could break in just about anywhere? And 4 respondents, Harun said yes, Saumil said yes, Ivan Arsh said yes, and FX said yes as well. The prices were about $100,000 to $500,000. This would what it would take to assemble a crack team that can basically open any door. But that was not the premise of Harun's talk. The premise for him was to say that while the attacks are cheap, the cost basically depends upon what are you going to do once you're in. And that is what we've been seeing now. Lateral movement, laying low, dwell time. These techniques are rapidly improving. And these techniques is where the true cost of attacker tool chains lies. We all were focusing on the bug that would get us in, the 0 days. But it is the dwell time that was really the core component of the attacker tool chain. Coming to economics of attacks, right? Sometimes by design, a feature might entirely weaken a platform. Like if I asked you to choose which version of WhatsApp do you want to target first, the mobile version or the web version, what would your answer be? The path of least resistance would definitely be in the web version. So the non-obvious approach towards exploiting software was often overlooked. You always focus the spotlight on the glory stuff, the big 0 days, the multiple chains. But the truth is, the damage caused by something really trivial, like one weakness in a supply chain attack, will affect everything. This would mean like the collapse of digital infrastructure. This bug would be all over the place. And we saw that happen while we were riding the pandemic out. The classic SolarWinds bug. Right? Everybody knows this story. Or what are the takeaways? Right? Now, if you're a defender, this vulnerability was not talked about by the magic quadrants. At that time, Windows 10 exploit mitigations couldn't stop it, even though they were pretty hard to bypass. But the big question is, was SolarWinds even a part of the threat model? Who would have thunk it that somebody is just going to log into a Git repo and add a few lines of code, and that backdoor would just propagate through the continuous integration chain? Now, as an attacker, was any sophisticated zero-day used? Nope. Any Stuxnet style cyber weapon used? Nope. But don't you wish you would have thought of this? The simplicity of this attack and the output that it generated led us to think okay, there's something to be taken away from here. Yeah, the more sophisticated the technology, the more vulnerable it is to primitive attack. And this adage still holds true. The evolution of defense has been kind of a crazy one. We've always started denying this, no this, no that. It's been a reactive approach. The idea is to block the bad things and become secure again. We saw where that got us. People will always find a way out. There'll always be a mechanism to get around. But by doing so, creating these type of defense technologies, there's such a glut of defense technologies that now folks are trying to sell it left, right, and center. You see this everywhere. Defense technology basically consists largely of rules, signatures, updates, and now throw in machine language for making it a little buzzwordy. But part of Halvar's keynote also stated that why is there a market for security products? At some point, we kind of lost the way in defending the attack. We were trying to defend our own positions as a CISO. You don't want to be blamed if an attack happens, and at some point it might. But when an attack happens, you can always go back to the board and saying, I bought the best of breed. Look, I checked off all the boxes. It ain't my fault. And that is the whole idea of, risk mitigation of the position and what led us to here. And the kind of products are all over the place. There's funny tweets, but sometimes these tweets have some element of truth in it. You even have a total inventory of your assets. Only a few mature organizations do. Not all, I'm afraid. So the bottom line is, you just got to deal with the fact that there will be vulnerabilities. NAKATOMI space will exist. If you have an asset, this asset is hacked and secure at the same time. It's Schrodinger's hack. It's secure until it gets hacked. It's always been that way. The moment you start viewing infrastructure and assets in this light, your thought pattern and your approach towards both attacks and defense will change. But the latter part of my talk, which begins now, is faced when both these paths converge. So what happens when attacks actually meet defense? There have been incidents. We've only seen one or the other side of the incidents. But what is the combined effect of these attacks and defenses meeting one another? So each battle basically burns a bug and burns a kind of defense technology. This bug category will never be used again. And whatever defense mechanism or defense technology was being used to protect against that bug is also never going to be invoked again. As a result, what happens? You got cyber weapons which cost a lot to build, but the idea is you can't stockpile them for future use. It's either use them or lose them. And as a result, the whole bazaar for offensive cyber technology has now become the military digital complex. There are very gray lines between geographical boundaries, jurisdiction, the right kind of policies that govern exports or purchases. And every now and then we are seeing that stuff has been sold or double dipped or leaked out, but it's going to be there. It's going to stay. There's not the policy making will never catch up with the evolution of this market. Something we got to learn about. Now, what are the net outcomes of the defense side of things? When each battle burns one bug and one type of defense technology, what do we do with that defense technology? So here I refer you to a presentation that my friend Shah van der Walt made at 44Con 2018. Are we sitting on a security debt crisis? Basically, what Shah has done is put together a table of the costs. Think of security assets as a loan that you've borrowed them and you're paying interest on them, compound interest. You need to pay for its maintenance, upkeep, and as your loans grow, your debt keeps on increasing. Pretty much like the whole subprime market, except it's applicable to digital infrastructure. Eventually, it is the customer who is going to bear the burden of the entire debt, as it was the homeowner who bore the entire burden of the whole subprime market collapse in 2008. It's too much debt going on. And this is what we see all over. This is where you accrue technical debt. So there was actually a nice campaign that I liked. I don't know what happened to it. It said that say no to another PO. Like just stop buying stuff. There's enough around. But the thing is, investments in technologies have been so much. What is really missing, and this is my big takeaway from coming to conferences such as Hack in the Box over the several years and talking to a number of lovely people as you, everyone has told me that the main target of investment should be people. And this has been the lowest spend. And this brings us to PEBKAC. A tweet by Grug and Sebastian Post was pretty interesting. And Grug was mentioning how phishing sometimes is more effective than zero-day. And SP's response was also thought-provoking that we've hardly made any efforts towards user hardening as we have done towards software hardening. We only treated the user as an idiot and just told them, don't do this, don't do that. Like conditioned the users to become automatons, just click things. And even today, to prevent things like, form submission, we now have to make the user submit a CAPTCHA. All we're doing is alienating the users further away. And what happens as a result? As an organization who wants to defend, neither do you have a pulse on your users, nor do you have a finger on the pulse of your own teams. And there is a big divide. The have-nots and the haves of defense, of cyber defenders. Like most of the organizations belong to the have-not space. Like they don't have the capability, whereas the teams that have capabilities, they're capable of creating custom tools. The capable teams own cybersecurity, whereas the have-nots will push cybersecurity to somebody else. The capable teams have all the talent to generate technology that they need from the inside, and the have-nots will simply keep on accruing technical debt. So it is time that we start behaving differently. Where are both sides going? On one side, you have an escalation of prices and the complexities for generating bugs, and a bazaar which is growing across borders rapidly. We don't know what to do with it. We don't know where it's heading. On the defense side, you're having mountains and mountains of technical debt with kind of no end in sight to repaying. It's not a happy place to be in. It's not sustainable for either groups. So while I don't have too many solutions towards this, I definitely have some philosophical thoughts to share with you. So rather than a culture of resistance where you pass the parcel, you defend by rule signatures and updates, or keep buying the next short-lived security product and encumber your users, why don't we instead adopt a approach from resistance to resonance, where you take ownership build defendable systems by design, by architecture, and involve security and trustworthiness as a core feature. Stuff like what Gmail does, lets you inspect where you were last logged in from. Or stuff like what WhatsApp does, like, hey, you've been logged in from these desktops and these browsers. Are you aware of it? Put the user in control. Empower the user to take better informed security decisions, and they'll do it for you. And rather than InfoSec being the business of selling fear, I wish it turns into a business of selling trust. So, takeaway elements from this. The more things change, the more they remain the same. We've seen this over the past 20 years. There will be NAKATOMI space, there will be bugs, and products are just going to be short-lived. When it comes to bugs, use them or lose them. And when it comes to defense, please be mindful of technical debt. And rather than investing in products, please invest in capabilities of your own people. So, the concluding thought is, you and I are looking at two sides of the same coin. We've been doing so for a number of years. We'll continue to do so. It's time definitely to make a change in directions. Lastly, where do we go from here? I don't know. What's the next hack in the box going to be? I don't know. What's the next direction going to be? I don't know. But I do know that, and this is a bittersweet moment, I do know that Amsterdam has been very close to my heart. I found family here. I found love here. It's with this fond statement that I would like to conclude. For the next conference, I know where my next stop is. It's Ring Zero Gravity in Las Vegas. Hope to see a few of you folks there. With this, I conclude. I want to thank you for all the love, all your time, and all your attention. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Saumil.
Most welcome.
Do we have questions from the room? A lot of attentive faces, but no questions. There's no question about that. I do have a question.
Go for it.
Because you're mentioning a lot about the do's and the don'ts and the kind of way that companies should adopt security. And when I look around in our the space of our clients, there are a lot of small business, medium business, businesses that really do not have any expertise. How would you advise them to get up to speed with security?
Oh, that is, why do you have to ask such hard questions? I don't know. I mean, recently, I'll tell you my own story, right? I've been doing exploits defense, but it's a bit personal. Starting up a new training event, I found myself in the small business spot. Like now I have to run a registration site. So what do? Do I code up stuff in PHP? Do I get PCI certified? And it is a challenging start. So initially I just went what everybody else did. Rented services, and I'm just paying for cloud services or paying for third-party services. And the only thing we're doing differently, I would say, than average businesses is we're extremely vigilant. We're keeping an eye on every transaction, anything that happens, looking at the NAKATOMI space, keeping an eye on it. If something weird happens, respond really quickly. Okay? Worst case, shut it down for a moment. Mm-hmm. But keep a watch. That's what I would say is the first step. And then while you're doing that, hope your business grows and flourishes, then you can become bigger, and then, bring a real defense force on.
That's a very clear answer.
Thank you.
Do we have additional questions? If not, yeah, here in the front. We have a mic coming up to you.
Will you be at the after party?
I will be at the after party.
Okay, great.
Hell yeah. Will be.
There's a question all the way in the back.
Do you see a role for open source software and technology helping to facilitate this shift in mindset about security?
Do I see a role of open source? Yes, absolutely, I do. I want to say two things about open source, though. First of all, adoption with open source is great. Like, it definitely creates rapid adoption. And if there's rapid adoption, it's popular, and there is impetus to keep improving it. So go open source, brilliant. And if people join in and grow that thing further, even better. The catch-22 side of open source is this belief that open source software is inherently more secure than closed source. No, it's not. Please treat open source and closed source software the same when it comes to software quality and security quality levels. There's like this, people think that everybody's looked at open source software, so it must be bug-free because so many eyeballs have gone through it. There's like an ancient Indian story with the emperor, testing, ask the ministers stating that given a chance, a person will always be dishonest. And the story goes something like this. The emperor asked every citizen to line up in the darkness, come to the palace, and pour one glass of milk into a big empty vessel and go home. The next morning, that entire vessel had nothing but water in it. Everybody came and just poured water because they thought, oh, everybody's going to pour milk, so I'm going to add a glass of water. And that exposes the fallacy of bug hunting in open source software. So that's the only thing I would say about open source software. Use it, adopt it, treat it as an adoption vehicle, but don't treat it as a secure piece of software.
All right.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up. So what do you think we can do to get out of that catch-22 that you're talking about?
Just treat it the same. Audit it, fuzz it, test it, and improve it. You're welcome.
All right. I don't see any other hands going up. In that case, I would like to thank you, Saumil, very much for this talk.
Thank you, Persik.